The MG3 is a fearsome weapon, and right now, just in this moment, it is being used to clear a Russian trench. That is because it can be used both offensively and defensively. Building on the legacy of its predecessor, it has already earned legendary status in certain circles. Join us in today's episode as we take a closer look at the German MG3 in trench combat in Ukraine. This Brazilian volunteer, fighting in the ranks of Ukraine, is defending his position against a Russian attack in the Serebryansky forest. He is armed with an FNFAL, but in the background we could already hear an MG3 sawing through the woods. The fighter joins his buddies at the MG3 position and begins sending aimed shots with his rifle downrange toward the Russian positions. The intensity of the battle the men are currently engaged in can clearly be measured by the level of the combat noise and the high volume of fire. All of a sudden, a huge blast shakes the area. The men, however, remain calm and composed, a clear sign that this was certainly not their first rodeo. The fighter's rate of fire also shows that he is not intimidated by the Russian attack and continues to respond with controlled, precise shots. Shortly after, the MG3 joins in and resumes firing in controlled bursts as well. The Brazilian fighter now shifts position to cover a different field of fire. MG3 machine guns have seen extensive use in the Serebryansky forest, as shown here in this helmet camera footage from the perspective of a Ukrainian machine gunner. The MG3 is generally reliable when well maintained, but comparative testing has shown it is not the most forgiving design under extreme conditions. Fine sand, mud, or lack of lubrication can cause feeding issues in any machine gun, but the MG3's recoil-operated mechanism, with its tight roller lock tolerances, may be somewhat less tolerant of debris than gas-operated guns. The MG3 entered Ukraine's war largely through German aid, but Italy also provided an undisclosed number of its MG 42/59 machine guns, an Italian license-built variant of the German MG3. Initially, many MG3s were likely issued to Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces or National Guard units to bolster their firepower, since these formations had a mix of older Soviet and donated Western arms. The MG3 is robust, easy to keep running with basic training, and designed for rapid barrel changes. The cartridge it fires has reach and punch, able to chew through light cover and damage unarmored vehicles. When a position needs to be held, an MG3 team can lay interlocking lanes of fire and make open ground very costly. But there are trade-offs. The MG3 fires fast, so fast that ammunition disappears quickly and barrels heat up in moments. Crews must work in short, controlled bursts, swap barrels on schedule, and manage belts and links with discipline. It is also a heavy system to carry over distance, and on a simple bipod it can be harder to keep perfectly on target than slower firing guns. For long patrols or when endurance matters more than shock, lighter or slower systems may be preferred. Training and logistics smooth out many of these issues. Units learn the rhythm of loading, charging, and bursting. Assistants handle spare barrels and ammunition. On vehicles, stability and optics make the gun more precise and effective day or night. In defensive lines, stockpiled belts and planned fields of fire let the MG3 do what it does best without pause. The same is true here, where an MG3 fire team sets up a shaky base of fire to engage Russian positions. Watch as the gunner takes up an unusual firing position to improve his aim. Now he is about to give the Russians a taste of the MG3's full belt. This dedication deserves your like. The fire is most likely harassment fire, intended to disrupt Russian positions and restrict their movement. Such fire is less about inflicting immediate casualties and more about keeping the enemy under pressure, lowering their morale, and limiting their freedom of action. Harassment fire can vary in intensity, from sporadic bursts to a steady rhythm of shots. At one moment it may come as a sudden, isolated crack meant to unsettle, while at another it can settle into a repeated, methodical cadence that keeps defenders pinned down and on edge. The alternation between brief, unpredictable bursts and prolonged strings of fire is what makes it effective, never allowing the enemy to know whether they are facing a minor distraction or the opening phase of a larger attack. This time, however, the men show mercy and pull back after the belt is spent. We find ourselves in another situation with the International Legion.
Move!
They are about to clear a small house.
Possible! Grenade!
In situations like these, this squad lets a fragmentation grenade do the work for them first. They then proceed to pour fire into the building through its doorway and windows.
Inside lights!
The presence of Russian forces in the building is confirmed.
There's Russians! There's voices inside!
With Russian forces inside and the men's limited firepower on the outside, they have little choice but to clear the building from within. Inside the building, the troops have to contend with low visibility and cramped conditions as they attempt to get to the enemy. Once again, a grenade is the preferred weapon of choice. But before that, one of the Legionnaires asks for confirmation of enemy contact again.
Did you get contact?
I could have swore I saw a cigarette!
That's because, unlike the Russians, the men must make sure there are no civilians in the house.
Throw another grenade, fucking
Grenade!
The grenade is thrown, and the men storm deeper into the house.
Ah! Shoot! Go! In! I can't see!
Clearing a house is a dangerous process that is both time and manpower intensive. To secure the assault, additional security elements are usually required to take up positions outside the building, protecting the storming soldiers from potential interference by enemy relief forces. Here we have a better view of the International Legion clearing a house.
Lord.
Once again, the assault is initiated with the use of a grenade.
Baby, back! Grenade!
After that, the men get ready to open fire.
Give him hell, son!
However, after a few shots, one gun jams. That doesn't stop the rest of the squad from compensating for the loss by increasing their volume of fire. During a brief fire pause, the cameraman tries to communicate with the Russians. What did he say? Write it in the comments. The footage you see here is archival material from the days of the Battle of Kursk. Back then, the men had very clear orders on how to deal with Russian infiltrators.
So essentially, whenever a drone above the village would spot any Russian activity whatsoever, we'd get a call radio and they'd be like, there are Russian Spetsnaz in this building, go f them up. And that was our command directive in that village.
This directive led to countless engagements like this. In general, the best way to deal with enemy strongpoints is to destroy the house with explosives, tanks, or airstrikes. But when that kind of firepower isn't available, the only option is to use grenades and small arms. This is a very time-consuming process that often forces the soldiers to expose themselves in the open for extended periods, making them potential targets for drones and artillery.
I'm so sorry, boss. The door blew back on me.
As a result, the soldiers operate under constant stress and time pressure, which can lead to mistakes. However, this time the mistake was minor. The Legionnaire merely misjudged the force with which the door was blown back at them. Also, no drones or artillery targeted them immediately, which gave them some time to operate freely in the open air. As you can probably see, the international fighters carried out countless such operations, almost all following the same pattern. That's not always the case, of course, but over time, certain standard operating procedures develop for particular situations. One common method, already mentioned several times, is to open the assault with a grenade, followed by heavy fire to demoralize the defender and deny them any ability to respond to the attack. This approach also serves to push any surviving enemies deeper into the building, so the attackers can exploit the resulting gap and enter. shelter. Once inside, the fighting turns into close quarters combat, and the attackers are at least somewhat protected from aerial threats such as drones and artillery. It is nevertheless well known that the Russians will still respond with artillery even when friendly forces are engaged in close combat. This is the case because the Russians do not seem to view the tactical level in the same way as Western armed forces, assigning no priority to the survivability of individual elements. Some observers even go so far as to claim that the Russians appear to have no real concept of the tactical level at all, always starting instead from the operational level. While this certainly holds some truth, especially during the early stages of the war, the Russians have by now adopted their own set of small unit tactics aimed at achieving success on the tactical level, as their current modus operandi on the front line shows. Although they still pay little attention to the survivability of individual elements, they have nevertheless developed concepts and approaches that, at least in abstract terms, statistically increase the chances of getting a small portion of their troops alive to their objectives, where situations like the one we see here on screen then unfold. Here, the assault of a Russian armored section is interrupted by the use of FPV drones. The first target is the rear vehicle, a BMP. The hit immobilizes it, and the infantry dismounts to flee on foot. Judging by the surrounding terrain, this is the worst possible place to be on foot in a drone war. Now it's the lead tank's turn. At first, its armor allows it to withstand the hits a little better, but after countless persistent strikes, it too eventually comes to a halt. The vehicle ends up just a few meters in front of a sparse tree line and is hit 2 more times. As a result, it catches fire and is completely knocked out of the fight. This Russian attack came to a dead end. We see a turtle tank equipped with a mine plow in front of a giant Ukrainian anti-tank ditch that it could not overcome. As if that weren't enough, an FPV drone moves in for the final strike. Although the impact looks relatively unspectacular, it is enough to set the tank on fire and send it toward its slow fate of demilitarization. Here, a Russian drone observes the attack of a Ukrainian MRAP on Russian positions. At high speed, the vehicle leaves the road and races through a field with the goal of reaching the edge of a wooded area nearby. The Russian drone is still monitoring the Ukrainian vehicle closely, but lets it carry on for now. As it reaches its designated drop-off point, it opens fire into the tree line with its onboard weapon to cover the dismounting of a squad of Ukrainian troops who rush into the forest to take up positions under the cover of the trees. While drone feeds are silent, we can see the men in the vehicle putting out a high volume of fire, so it must have been quite loud on the ground, underscoring the intensity of the situation. Suddenly, the Ukrainian vehicle shifts into reverse and nearly runs over a comrade, though fortunately it doesn't happen. It seems they were aware of the Russian drone's presence and therefore of the urgency. Sadly, they were right, as a Russian FPV drone intercepted the MRAP just moments later. Despite the hit, the vehicle kept moving for a while, but eventually came to a standstill, where it was struck by another FPV drone. A stark reminder that drone warfare goes in both directions, and its dangers are present for all sides at all times. The Russians then went on the hunt for the remaining crew members and the previously dismounted infantry. For this, they used, who would have thought it, drones. However, this can only be shown on Telegram. Here we see a Russian soldier on a motorcycle carrying a heavy bomber drone on his back. Only one propeller is spinning, but do you think he would have taken off if with it all 4 were working? The devastating capabilities of these heavier bomber drones are showcased very well here. Because of their size, they can carry larger and heavier payloads, allowing them to effectively target fixed positions, even those that are more fortified. Against armored targets, these drones are typically equipped with mines, RPG rounds, or other heavy explosives designed to disable or destroy vehicles. When used against fixed structures such as houses, as shown in this case, they often carry incendiary payloads, which are scarily effective at setting buildings ablaze and flushing out anyone inside. The versatility of these drones makes them a constant threat on the battlefield, as they can be adapted for both anti-armor, structure, and anti-personnel roles, turning almost any position into a potential target. And even more unsettling, since these are predefined fixed targets, the process can already be largely automated. At this point, the drones only need to be manually rearmed and recharged by a human before their next flight. Additionally, the target coordinates still have to be set manually beforehand, but after that, the rest could run on autopilot if desired. Here, Ukrainian soldiers even equipped such a drone with a 155mm artillery shell, effectively turning it into a 155mm kamikaze drone. An expensive trick given that these drones typically cost around $20,000. A standard high-explosive 155mm shell costs roughly $4,000 per unit, so this setup would cost at least $24,000. By comparison, precision-guided munitions like the M982 Excalibur can be substantially more expensive, with total operating costs approaching $100,000 per shell in 2022. So if the improvised drone could even fly, it would still be significantly cheaper than the guided variant, although it would lack the same range and precision. This video shows an interesting device. It lets Ukrainian soldiers view the feed of an intercepted Russian drone that was meant to hit their position, but is now being forced to crash in a controlled manner. This is a rare depiction of electronic warfare in action, something that usually occurs outside the visible spectrum.
Чи заглушил реп, походу, чи що?
Хуже на то, падає.
Падает. Да, упал. Ха! Класс!
A more spectacular way to deal with drones is the use of radar-equipped anti-aircraft guns like the legendary Gerpard. Originally developed for the German army, many of these systems were transferred to the Ukrainian armed forces as part of Germany's aid, where they have proven highly effective. However, they are mostly used against larger, long-range drones, such as Shahed kamikaze drones, though there have been instances where they also shot down FPV drones. The Gerpard is a German self-propelled anti-aircraft gun built on a Leopard chassis. It carries two rapid-firing 35mm cannons and has its own search and tracking radars, so it can find and track targets day or night. They excel at putting a lot of shells into the sky quickly, especially when using programmable airburst rounds. The Gerpard works best as part of a layered air defense system, where radars, missiles, and short-range guns all cover each other. In short, it's a powerful tool against bigger drones, but logistics and integration also determine how well it performs. One problem with the system is that it can chew through ammunition very quickly in high-intensity situations. A single engagement against multiple loitering munitions or swarm elements can expend hundreds or even thousands of rounds. That makes a steady ammunition supply absolutely critical for sustained operations. Operational reporting on Ukrainian Gepards has repeatedly highlighted ammunition shortages as a limiting factor for battlefield performance, even though the systems otherwise perform very well. The answer to this is the Skynex anti-air defense system, a new anti-aircraft gun that uses the same basic approach but offers advanced capabilities and a larger ammunition supply. Here we witness this system shoot down 6 Russian Shahed drones in quick succession. Skynex is a modern, modular, short-range air defense system built by Rheinmetall. It combines search and tracking radars with rapid-fire 35mm Oerlikon revolver guns and can be linked to short-range missile effectors. In other words, it brings sensors and shooters together in a plug-and-play package. The system is designed to detect small targets at tactical ranges. Published figures put detection of a 1 square meter target out to roughly 30 kilometers, and it uses programmable airburst 35mm rounds to shred loitering munitions and larger UAVs before they reach their aim point. Since we're talking about German weapon systems in combat, here's an interesting clip showing a German automatic grenade launcher, known briefly as the Gramawa, in action. That odd-sounding acronym stands for Grenade Machine Weapon, abbreviated GMW. It is the German equivalent of the American MK-19 automatic grenade launcher and fires 40 by 53mm grenades. Doctrinally, the roughly 80-kilogram weapon is operated by a 3-man crew and can fire about 300 rounds per minute. Here, however, the crew appears to have been reduced to 2 men. After firing from deep inside the room to present as small a silhouette as possible, the men then moved to conceal their position again, making it harder for the Russians to reconnoiter the site and to surgically strike it with precision munitions such as FPV drones. It's not a 40mm grenade launcher, but here we see the effect and impact ballistics of a heavy crew-served static weapon in action against a Russian position. We can also see an entire group of Russian soldiers out in the open, fleeing the area to avoid being hit by the heavy caliber machine gun. Luckily for them, they appear to have been engaged from long range, so the dispersion of the rounds was quite high. It's also fortunate this wasn't the GMW from the earlier clip. Had it been, they likely would have suffered several casualties. Nonetheless, a very good depiction of the receiving end of the work done by a heavy weapons team in combat. Hit the like button if you agree. What you see now is GoPro footage of a small Ukrainian unit conducting a mechanized assault on Russian positions with an infantry squad and a BTR-4 IFV. The men quickly dismount and storm toward a tree line in front of them, while the infantry fighting vehicle provides covering fire with its 30mm 2A72 cannon. What makes this clip different from other mechanized assault videos is that the BTR-4 isn't just acting as a battlefield taxi, but keeps advancing alongside the infantry to support their assault. The BTR-4 is a domestically produced infantry fighting vehicle derived from the Soviet BTR family, but it differs in many ways. First, crew situational awareness is improved thanks to enlarged windows instead of the BTR's usual small vision slits. Second is the armament. While more modern variants such as the Russian BTR-82 and BTR-90 can mount higher caliber weapons, many older BTR types are fitted with 12.7mm machine guns. Finally, the exit hatches are placed at the rear of the vehicle rather than in the sides, as with the original BTR design. While we're on the subject of rare vehicle assaults, here's another one, not something you see every day. Because in this clip we see a Swedish BVS-10, a tracked, articulated, amphibious, all-terrain armored vehicle, being used by Ukrainian forces in a raid on a Russian position. As visible in the video footage, the Russian trench network the men attacked was well established and had been further reinforced with wood and other materials. Although it initially looked like a routine assault, several indicators suggested the operation was intended more as a raid. First, the Swedish tracked vehicle remained close to the trench and did not leave the area immediately after dropping off the soldiers. Second, the soldiers carried heavy explosives into the trench, which might make you start to wonder what they plan to do next. More on that later. Also, the soldiers did not sweep through the trench to clear it meter by meter with grenades and small arms, as we usually see in such videos. Instead, they covered a wider area to provide security for the vehicle and for the men carrying the explosives. As mentioned earlier with buildings, trench clearing operations are also a complex, painstaking, and time-consuming process that every soldier would prefer to avoid whenever possible. For that reason, the preferred solution is often simply to blow enemy strong points apart with explosives, and to treat trench systems the same way. This reduces the soldiers' time on target, so they don't have to expose themselves to enemy countermeasures such as artillery or drones for long. A downside, however, is that the transport vehicles must remain on the position to enable a rapid exfil after the explosives are emplaced. That makes the whole procedure highly dependent on the survivability of the transport. If the vehicle is hit, the soldiers would be stranded in a trench now packed with explosives. After the charges were successfully emplaced, the soldiers exfiltrated in a coordinated manner. Luckily for them, they were fast enough. The BVS-10 was still there and operational, ready to carry them out of the hot zone. While the BVS-10 is a Swedish-made vehicle, the one you see here was donated by either the Netherlands or the UK, since both countries operate them and supplied units to Ukraine. In total, Ukraine received 48 of these vehicles, but we haven't yet seen extensive footage of their use like in this clip. All in all, this raid seems to have been pulled off very smoothly and fluently, and even the exfil didn't look all that troublesome. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian observation drone recorded the detonation and confirmed the target's destruction. After the successful mission, the vehicle moved to a concealed storage point inside Ukrainian-held territory, and the men dismounted apparently without casualties. However, one soldier sustained minor wounds. I hope you understand that images of this can only be shown on Telegram. Not all BVS-10 vehicles are so lucky. Here, for example, we see the front half of an abandoned BVS-10 being targeted by two Russian FPV drones. Both drones strike one after the other. A Russian observer drone films the entire sequence from outside, clearly capturing each hit. Here we have more Russian footage of another abandoned BVS-10 being hit by two Russian FPV drones again in quick succession. An observation drone is also in this case documenting everything from a safe distance. Swedish-made armored vehicles are generally heavily armored and can withstand a lot of hits, as shown in this Russian drone feed. In it, a Swedish PBV-302 IFV is chased by a Russian drone swarm across an open field and is hit a total of 5 times before coming to a standstill. At the start, the vehicle is hit directly twice, but nevertheless manages to escape the FPV drone that is showing the feed. Just as the drone lowers its altitude to gain an angle for a crash into the IFV, the vehicle builds up speed and drives away after shrugging off the first 2 hits with no visible damage. However, in the distance we can see it being hit by a third FPV drone. Although the hit initially appeared to have no effect, we can now see smoke rising from the vehicle, at first only a little, and then suddenly significantly more smoke becomes visible. After driving a few more meters, a 4th FPV drone hits the rear of the vehicle, immobilizing it, but it kept rolling for a few more meters before finally stopping. The crew quickly began to abandon the already burning immobilized IFV when a 5th drone struck the vehicle that had come to a stop. The PBV detonated and the observer drone also crashed into the scene, ending its feed. Further proof of the remarkable engineering of Swedish combat vehicles is this abandoned CV-90 inside which a Russian FPV drone flies and detonates. The already heavily damaged vehicle withstands the internal hit and is not ripped apart immediately, so the Russians dispatch another FPV drone to strike it from the outside this time. While this hit is also absorbed well by the CV-90, it has now started to burn. Apparently, this drives the Russians so angry that they dispatch a 3rd FPV drone determined to finish off the vehicle for good. The operator approaches the vehicle and searches for the best spot to strike to ensure the vehicle's destruction. After considering his options, he lands the drone inside the vehicle again and detonates it. Do you think they're happy with the outcome this time? This is a very rare clip from a Ukrainian drone capturing the exact moment a Russian FAB glide bomb hits the ground right next to a railway. High-quality Ukrainian drone footage shows a Russian soldier attempting to hide behind a tree as a Ukrainian FPV drone approaches. The soldier tries to evade the drone by circling the tree trunk. As you might expect, the attempt is unsuccessful, so we have to continue this video on Telegram. See you there.